Where's my thing? Mr. President.
The senator from Tennessee.
Mr. President, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to vitiate the quorum call.
Without objection.
I thank you for that. Mr. President, noticing that there's nothing happening on the floor, I want to come down and talk a little bit about the vote that just occurred on the Tester-Corker amendment. Obviously, I was on the losing side of this debate. But as we went back to our office, I did want to say that one of the folks that I've worked with for a long time noted that this may be the first time in a long, long time in the United States Senate you had a real bipartisan debate where you had people on both sides of the aisle, on both sides of the issue in large numbers. And while, Mr. President, we came up short from my standpoint on the vote, the other side obviously didn't come up short, I want to say that I see a glimmer of hope. And that regardless of how the outcome may have been on this particular vote, and again, I worked hard to try to pass an amendment that I thought was good policy, the fact is, if you really look at the vote count, I cannot remember in a long time a vote on a contentious piece of legislation like this where there were so many people in the majority and minority on both sides of the issue just evaluating the policy on the grounds on which it was coming forth. So for what it's worth, I thought that was an interesting observation. And I want to say to those people who supported the Tester-Corker amendment, I thank them very much for them listening and working with us to try to pass the legislation. And for those people who voted against it, again, I thank them for the way in which this debate was conducted. Again, it's been a long time since I remember something like this on the floor where you had such a split vote on both sides of the aisle. And I think that's progress, and I just wanted to note that to the President and certainly to all of those who were actively engaged in this debate on both sides of it. I think that in itself, while we did not prevail in the legislation itself, from the standpoint of the Senate, not myself, I think that is an accomplishment worth noting. And with that, Mr. President, I want to yield the floor. Again, I notice the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. detailee on the staff of the Subcommittee on Crime and Terrorism of the Committee on the Judiciary, be granted floor privileges for the remainder of the 112th Congress.
Without objection.
Madam President, I suggest the absence of quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Utah.
I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be rescinded.
Without objection.
Madam President, our economic situation grows more dire by the day. Our unemployment rate has gone back up to 9.1%. Last month, only 54,000 jobs were created. You've got to create over 125,000 to just stay even. Housing prices remain in free fall. Since 2007, home values have declined by more than they did during the Great Depression. In large part due to QE2, Americans are facing higher gas prices and higher food prices that are cutting into their family budgets. And now there's increasing pressure for a QE3, which would only accelerate commodity inflation. And looming over all of this is our national debt. We have a national debt of nearly $14.5 trillion. That actually understates things. This is how USA Today calculated it earlier this week. This chart here says it all. Let me just read that. U.S. owes $62 trillion. Let me just read that again so that it sinks in. U.S. owes $62 trillion. Numbers like this are frightening to the American people. They are numbers fit for a banana republic, not the great United States of America. And they are numbers that demand a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution. Now, I do not say this lightly. Our Constitution has served us well, working over more than 2 centuries to guarantee and extend liberty and equal rights of American citizens. But from time to time, it has become apparent that the Constitution needs to be amended. The founders themselves contemplated this eventuality, giving to the people's representatives in Congress and the people in the various states, the opportunity to amend the Constitution. And it has become so clear that our spending situation is so grim, and the President and some members of his party are so unwilling to rectify it, that a constitutional amendment is in order. The bottom line is that federal spending has become a threat to liberty. The inability to rein in federal spending is effectively undermining the promises of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution's preamble. Federal spending is a threat to this nation's free men and women, slowly turning our fellow citizens into servants and stewards. To restore the Constitution's promise and the classical liberty that the founders sought to secure, we must amend the Constitution, and we must do it now. We must amend the Constitution by voting on S.J. Res. 10, passing it and sending it to the people of the states for ratification. The people that I serve in Utah are demanding this action, and I know that citizens across this country are demanding it as well. They see the problems looming up before us. One of the first things that I did at the beginning of this Congress was introduce S.J. Res. 3, a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. It received the support of 32 members of the Senate at that time, and we just didn't have time to get to the rest of them. But what is really remarkable was what happened a few weeks later. All 47 members of the Republican caucus unified behind a single balanced budget amendment, S.J. Res. 10. I was proud to work with my colleagues, individuals of varied political beliefs from across the country, to draft this amendment that announced loudly and clearly where the Senate Republican caucus stands on this issue. When I introduced that amendment at the end of March, I was honored to stand by the Senate's Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, my colleague from Utah, Mike Lee, as well as my colleagues Senators Cornyn, Toomey, DeMint, Rubio, and many others who took a stand for putting constitutional restraints on federal spending and restoring the Constitution's original checks and balances. I was honored by the support this amendment received from groups committed to taxpayers and limited government. There is a list of just some of the groups. Here's a list of just some of the groups supporting S.J. Res. 10, 60+, Americans for Tax Reform, Americans for Prosperity, Club for Growth, Freedom Works, Americans for Limited Government, the National Taxpayers Union, the Council for Citizens Against Government Waste, the Pass the BBA Coalition, the National Taxpayer Limitation Committee, the American Council for Health Reform, grassroots voices and ending spending. But most of all, I was honored to be serving my constituents in Utah who told me that this was a fight worth having. I am under no illusions that this is going to be an easy fight. The bottom line is that some members of Congress, and certainly President Obama, cannot be trusted to control federal spending in the long term. Consider the issue of entitlement spending. Medicare and Social Security are bankrupt. The failure to put forward a plan that would address their permanent spending shortfalls is quite simply a plan for the destruction of Medicare and Social Security. The Democrats' commitment to the entitlement status quo is a commitment to national bankruptcy. But don't take my word for it. Listen to what the Social Security and Medicare trustees had to say about those programs. In 2010, Social Security ran a $49 billion cash deficit. It is now permanently in the red, with the federal government forced to use general revenues to make up for these shortfalls. The trust fund will be completely exhausted in 2036. And we all know there is no real trust fund, just IOUs issued by the government. But even that will be exhausted in 2036. And what about Medicare? Not to be outdone, Medicare's trust fund is now permanently in the red as well and will be completely depleted in 2024, if not before, because that date keeps moving up because of the profligacy of people here in the Congress and the lack of leadership in the White House. These numbers are jarring. They demand a serious and an adult response. But what is the reaction of our colleagues on the other side to these numbers, or at least some of them? For too many, the strategy is one of deny and smear. Deny there is a problem, and smear those who attempt to fix this spending crisis. The President's budget was a joke. His Dover budget was nothing more than a speech with some vague details. Before Memorial Day, the Senate's Democratic leadership busied itself attacking Chairman Paul Ryan's budget rather than offering up one of their own. Just before Memorial Day, that's what they did. At a time when leadership is called for, President Obama is missing in action and complicit in the demagoguery of his surrogate at the Democratic National Committee. And there's a reason that Democrats are reluctant to offer any way forward out of this mess. It's quite simple, really. They refuse to cut spending and reform entitlements. But they also refuse to tell the truth about the tax increases that would be necessary to balance the budget their way. And the entitlements, of course, are Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare, just to mention a few. The Democrats are content to be the tax collectors for the welfare state, but they will not acknowledge what this entails. Massive tax increases on America's families and on America's small businesses. In his original budget, President Obama proposed $1.6 trillion in tax increases on all segments of our economy. But in spite of these tax increases, his budget got nowhere close to balance. Before Memorial Day, Democrats attacked Chairman Ryan's budget and offered up as an alternative roughly $21 billion in tax increases on oil companies. To borrow from John McEnroe, they cannot be serious. $21 billion in tax increases when we have $62 billion in unfunded obligations, when we have $62 trillion in unfunded obligations. U.S. owes $62 trillion. What a joke. The experience of the last few decades and the last few weeks demonstrates the need for a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. Our spending is simply out of control. And President Obama and many of his allies refuse to address this spending in a meaningful way. All they have in their bag of tricks are tax increases, but the tax increases that would be necessary to fill this deficit hole would crush the liberty and the livelihoods of the American people. Now, rather than doing serious work and making the tough decisions necessary to right our out-of-control fiscal ship, rather than engaging in true leadership, the President seems content to focus on the next election and leave the hard decisions for a later day. That is the best-case scenario. The worst-case scenario is that certain liberals are content to force a full-blown fiscal crisis, one that would make the economic collapse of 2008 and 2009 look like the minor leagues, and then hope that all of the pressure will be to institute a value-added tax that we will be a permanently open spigot, filling the coffers of the bloated federal government. Either of these scenarios is unacceptable. The fact is we're running out of time. The country needs to act now. Unfortunately, in the absence of presidential leadership, the Constitution provides an opportunity for Congress, along with the people of the states, to amend the Constitution and solve our country's systemic fiscal imbalance, even when the President refuses to do so. Getting a balanced budget amendment passed is going to be an uphill climb. We all know that. I know all too well the Democrats' calculated resistance to serious efforts to reduce federal spending. In 1997, a balanced budget amendment that I introduced and fought for fell short by just one vote in the Senate. We had 66 votes. We actually had 67 that morning, but one of our senators was threatened by the unions and flipped off, and we lost by one vote. 14 years later, our national debt stands at over $14 trillion, threatening our economic future, reducing our global competitiveness, and jeopardizing our national security. Now, can you imagine where we'd be had we really been successful in passing that amendment and had one more vote to do it back in 1997? We wouldn't be in the colossal mess we're in today. Yet the resistance to a balanced budget amendment is probably even stronger among Democrats now than it was in 1997. Nonetheless, I am hopeful. If the citizens and taxpayers of Utah are in any way representative of the people in the rest of the country, and I think they are, it is clear that they have had enough. The people of this country are not going to stand by any longer and wait for a Congress to fix this situation. They understand that the Constitution must be amended in order to revive the Founders' original limits on the size of the federal government. Passing a balanced budget amendment is not just a constitutional imperative. It is essential to the long-term fiscal health of this country. In the coming weeks, the fight over the debt limit is going to come to a head. It is going to be a long, hot summer. But I, like a lot of others who really care for this country, will be itching for a fight, and I will go to the mat for this balanced budget amendment. In this country, the people are sovereign, and it's well past the time that we give them a balanced budget amendment to ratify. Now, I urge my colleagues who have not done so already to support S.J. Res. 10. And I look forward to debating and voting on this amendment and passing it later this summer. I believe the leadership on the other side should bring up the balanced budget amendment and have a full-scale debate before we lift the debt ceiling. That would really, if the debt ceiling is to be lifted, and I'm not so sure it should be lifted without a balanced budget amendment. On the other hand, the very least that has to happen is to bring up this balanced budget amendment before we actually get into the fight over the debt ceiling. It would be a very, very good thing for this whole body to have to defend itself and to have to make arguments pro and con with regard to the balanced budget constitutional amendment. And I believe when the American people see in what terrible shape we're in, caused by terrible profligacy, caused by terrible spending by the Congress of the United States, caused by unreasonable approaches towards trying to get things under control by those who've been in control here and by the left. Let's just all understand it. This doesn't come from the right, it comes from the left. When people start to really understand this, they're going to get tremendously angry. And I think in every respect, they're going to start saying, we've had enough. We've had enough. And it's time for you folks in the Congress to stand up and pass a balanced budget amendment that we'll have to live with in order to save this country and to save it from the free fall that we're in right now. I hope we can get our colleagues on both sides. We do have all 47 Republicans. I hope we can get our colleagues on the other side to think and look clearly about the balanced budget constitutional amendment, S.J. Res. 10. And I look forward to debating and voting on this amendment and passing it later this summer. Madam President, I suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.